we're going to start today with Donald Trump's interview with NBC's Kristen Welker. And look, I'm not here to explain it all or to make sense of it all, because that would be a very tall task. And frankly, I'm not here to sane-wash some of the crazy things he says or pretend his tone means he's a changed man. I don't think that's the thing. But it was his first interview as president-elect, and there were a few pieces that I think are important to hear to understand where we're going from here. First, on the issue of immigration. Now, during the interview, Trump doubled down on his desire to end birthright citizenship. And he also said this about family separation.
We'll send the whole family very humanely back to the country where they came. That way the family's not separated.
So no more family separations. You're not reviving the zero tolerance policy. It depends on the family. The family may decide to say, I'd rather have dad go, and we'll stay here. And in which case they have that option.
Now, I have no idea what that will look like or what that means, and it raises lots of questions. I do know that does not sound great for families. Trump also talked about tariffs during this interview, one of his favorite words to throw around, as we all know. Here's his take on that issue.
You are now proposing tariffs against the United States' three biggest trading partners. Economists of all stripes say that ultimately consumers pay the price of tariffs.
I don't believe it.
Can you guarantee American families won't pay more?
I can't guarantee anything. I can't guarantee tomorrow. But I can say that if you look at just pre-COVID, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And I had a lot of tariffs on a lot of different countries, but in particular China. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars, and we had no inflation.
Now, the last part of that is not exactly a factual statement, but what should be most interesting to anyone watching that full clip is that Trump remains insistent on putting in place tariffs despite not being able to guarantee it won't raise prices on the American people, which, by the way, is what the majority of economists say. Now, throughout his conversation with Kristen Welker, Trump also expressed what some might call confidence, others might call delusion, about the issues with some of his cabinet choices. I mean, he seemed to gloss over Tulsi Gabbard's secret meetings with now former Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. He suggested that everyone is rah-rah about an FBI director, Kash Patel, which even people who like him, I'm not sure they'd agree everybody's rah-rah. And this is what he had to say about his pick for Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth.
The fact that he said to some senators reportedly he'll stop drinking if he gets this job, does that worry you?
No, I think that everybody has something that they can stop. Some people can stop eating. I'm lucky I'm not a drinker, but I could stop eating. And we all want to stop doing something. And if he said that, I mean, it's a nice thing to say.
How concerned are you that the person who you picked for this top job at the Defense Department, at least according to those who've worked with him, has struggled with drinking?
But I've spoken to people that know him very well, and they say he does not have a drinking problem.
I mean, there are a lot of people in this country who have problems with alcohol abuse, many who are effectively in recovery. The Secretary of Defense does need to be on call at all hours, ready to make life and death decisions. All important. But I'm much more concerned about things like, say, the allegations of sexual assault against him, or his opposition to women in combat, or his complete lack of experience to do the job. Now, on top of all of these moments, Trump also said a lot of other things in this interview, things that maybe we've all heard many times before, but should still be alarming. We can't be numb to it, like saying that Liz Cheney and the rest of the January 6th Select Committee should go to jail. I mean, no matter how many times we hear something like that, it is still chilling. It should be. But right now, just a few weeks away from the start of a second Trump term, I really want to focus on a particular piece of this interview that could impact many of you watching at home. And that is what Trump said about the Affordable Care Act.
Obamacare is lousy health care. It's very expensive health care for the people. It's also expensive for the country, but for the people. It's lousy health care.
Do you have an actual plan at this point for health care?
Yes, we have concepts of a plan that would be better.
Still just concepts? Do you have a fully developed plan?
Let me explain. We have the biggest health care companies looking at it. We have doctors. We're always looking because Obamacare stinks. It's lousy. There are better answers. If we come up with a better answer, I would present that answer to Democrats and to everybody else, and I do something about it. I am the one that saved Obamacare, I will say, and I did the right thing. I could have done the more political thing and killed it, and all I had to do is starve it to death.
You did try to have your Justice Department effectively kill it, though,
No,
sir.
Kill it from a legal standpoint, but from a physical standpoint, I made it work.
Okay. I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to sane wash, but I'm going to try to sum up what just happened there. He has a knee-jerk aversion to it. He doesn't have an alternative. Concepts of a plan is not an alternative. He also wants credit for saving it, which he does is not warranted, but he's still trying to get rid of it, if you got all that. But even putting aside these Trumpian inconsistencies, what he's saying here is a big deal. I mean, a record 20 million Americans signed up for Affordable Care Act coverage in 2024. A record number. That's a huge number of people. And there have been efforts since it was passed almost 15 years ago to undo it. But there has never been an actual workable alternative plan proposed. Trump himself clearly does not have any actual plan. We know that. And here's the thing. If you take Obamacare away, the Affordable Care Act away, whatever you want to call it, with no grand plan in place, what you are really doing is taking away health care coverage from millions of people. You're taking away coverage from people who have pre-existing conditions. You're taking away coverage from parents who cover their kids who are under the age of 26. You're taking away the ACA's Medicaid expansion, which would mean that more than 3 million adults across 9 states would be at immediate risk of losing health care coverage. So yeah, look, Trump said a lot of things in this very long interview. It's posted. You should all look at it if you want to. There are things in there that are jarring and shocking and often not based in reality, and it can be hard to make sense of it all. I know the instinct can sometimes be to laugh it off or tune it out, but when he says something like that, we really need to listen because it could impact all of us, everybody sitting at home, very soon. Joining me now is Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. This week, she was promoted within her caucus to become the third-ranking Democrat in the Senate. She wears many hats, and I want to ask you about many things. Let me just start with Syria. There is, overnight, of course, rebels claimed Damascus. This is a significant development after a 13-year civil war, after Assad brutally abused his people. Of course, the group filling the space is also a designated terrorist organization. What is your reaction, and what are you watching for in the weeks and months ahead?
Well, the first is we all know Assad is a brutal dictator, 200,000 plus Syrians having been abducted, disappeared. So many died. I personally visited a Jordanian refugee camp. I remember Senator Lindsey Graham and I there way back, hoping at that moment there were some rebels advancing. And we said to them, remember they said, when are we going to get out? And we said, oh, we think soon. I'll never forget that because it ended up being so wrong. And so to have this brutal dictator gone is a good thing. It also shows Russia. It shows that Russia and Iran and Hezbollah are weakened for various reasons, some with Israel, some because of Zelensky's and Ukrainians and our allies' strong defense of Ukraine's sovereignty to the point where Russia and Putin is now using North Korean soldiers. At the same time, what this new regime is going to look like, because what we want is democracy, what we want is to bring these refugees back to their own lives that they had before Assad's horrible actions that he took when the rebels were coming in the last time. And so the hope is that this will be better, but we don't know yet. There's a lot of questions. And the U.S. position, which I know the president will be addressing today, President Biden, will be peace and stability in the region. That is our hope for the region.
Let me ask you about again, not a slow news day. Let me ask you about pardons. There has been reporting, which is not, I don't have any new information on. You can share with us that President Biden and his team are considering preemptive pardons. We're obviously in a different world right now with Trump coming in. What do you think about that? Is that a good idea?
I am not a fan of these. I didn't like the pardon of the president's son. I didn't think that was prudent. But I also am very concerned about this idea of the preemptive pardons. I am, of everyone, I'm very concerned about what Trump is going to do with this Justice Department. I actually spoke to Adam Schiff this weekend about this in anticipation that you might ask me.
Oh, how did you know?
Well, I just guessed it. And, he has publicly said that he does not want a preemptive pardon, that he believes that this is a nation of laws and that there are judges that make decisions all the time, including during the last Trump administration, including Republican appointees from many different administrations who did the right thing in many cases under the law. The president has this power. I would prefer that we actually Trump abused this pardon power. I think that we should have pardon reform. It is a right of these presidents, but you could have a committee set up. You could have suggestions from a board. You could do all kinds of things. That's what I'd like to see.
It'll be interesting. Hasn't happened before. I want to ask you a little bit about United Healthcare, the death of the United Healthcare CEO, the murder of him. I mean, he is from Minnesota, correct? There has been a response online that I'm just going to characterize as chilling. I just was wondering what you thought about it and how that's something. There is a great deal of frustration in this country about our healthcare system, but what is your reaction to all of it?
This is a horrific murder, and the fact that this cold-blooded killer is still out there on the streets somewhere in America is also very chilling. So my first focus is on that investigation. We have a number of people who work in Minnesota for that company, and it's a very hard thing. That aside, this idea that you would support this killer, I don't agree with that. I do believe we need more reform. And so when I hear Donald Trump talk about how he doesn't like the Affordable Care Act, I mean, that is the opposite direction we need to go to reform our healthcare system. What I would do, I would expand the Affordable Care Act with a public option, something we considered before. It is time to do that, so you have an option that doesn't involve private insurance companies. I would like to see an expansion of Medicare. This is another way you can do it, at least down to 55. So if you go down to 55, then it could be a much better healthcare system.